Tell me about the scenes like in that video where you see people just long lines of people waiting by cars.
It's the worst thing I've ever seen, and that was pretty much the opinion of every veteran that was there, and the guys that were on the ground had seen a lot that was terrible. It was just insane desperation, right? So we've all seen the footage of those people that were hanging onto the outside of the C-17 as it took off, and they fell to their deaths. Well, that desperation went nonstop for the 10 days that we were on the ground, and certainly the 4 or 5 days prior to that. People were literally crowd surfing babies to the front. Because they knew that if you could get an American to grab your infant, that the Americans would take them. The reason for that is that babies don't have to pass any kind of security criteria. There's obviously no malintent in an infant, and also they didn't take up a seat because babies could be carried on a lap. So, for example, the average flight, that we took over, had about 342 seats, and we typically would fill that to about 400 with all of the remaining seats, the remaining personnel being babies. So even if people would be holding on to infants that weren't theirs, we'd land with 50, 60, 70 infants. And so because of that, especially as, anytime like something would happen where there was Taliban violence near or whatever, people would get desperate, and they would be like, trying to scale the walls and like hand these babies up. Well, every once in a while, somebody went a little too far and would basically throw the baby, try to throw the baby over the wall, thinking that there were a bunch of troops sitting on the other side, and that the baby might land safely. But in fact, on the other side was concertina wire. And so, there were some babies that bled out literally on the other side of the wire. And, yeah, it was a real bad scene. People knew that if they didn't get on base, there was a good chance that they were going to die. And the news has shown a very clean version of what's happening, but the Taliban have killed a lot of people. They've killed a lot of interpreters. They are targeting people that helped us. And if they kill you, it's not like they're just shooting you. They are raping and murdering your wife and children in front of you, and then killing you, and then beheading all of you, and using that as a symbol for what happens for people that go against them.
Are you hearing that directly from people there? Like, who's reporting that that's happening?
No, I mean, like we've seen this happen.
You've seen it.
Yeah, our ground team arrived on scenes where we had just been talking to somebody, meet at this location. And they arrived, 10 minutes too late, 15 minutes too late, 5 minutes too late, and found, decapitated bodies of families. Some of the interpreters that we pulled out, it happened to their friends, and they thought they were next, and we got there in time. This is. There were Taliban that not far from base, just every once in a while would just drop an AK burst into the crowd. This was a terrible situation because the U.S. troops, are not allowed to leave the wire. They were not allowed to leave the wire. They could only pull people in, and they could defend the base, but they weren't allowed to go out and help people. And so, if news crews weren't around, bad things happened.
Was there concern about child trafficking in that kind of situation?
Yes. There's absolutely concern for child trafficking. In fact, one of the things that that we did, so we had our own refugee camp in UAE, where we were evacuating everybody to UAE. We had, State Department and multiple NGOs involved. And one of the first things that we did was make sure, who is attached to who. Is this your kid? If it isn't your kid, then we need to connect with UNICEF or any of the other large NGOs that handle this kind of thing, because we are not letting random children go off with people, even if the intentions were good. There is a process to all of this. And again, we had State Department on the ground, and they were helping us work through these issues. The other thing that we looked for were child brides. While it's acceptable in parts of Afghanistan, it is not acceptable in any of the countries where these refugees were going to be housed. And we did identify a couple of those situations, and the NGOs and local authorities dealt with that. But by and large, because of the screening process, we didn't have many issues. Most people were who they said they were, or they would come out and say, right out of the gate, this isn't my kid, but, we got through the gate and this kid didn't have, this kid's parents didn't make it, or this kid's parents were killed on the way here. And so we're taking care of the kid. And so, once you start organizing all of that in the refugee camps, we had rooms for the unaccompanied minors, so I did a little interview with, 2 13-year-old boys that were separated from their parents. One, somehow, some way, his parents made it to the US on a different flight. They got separated. He went through one gate, they went through another. So they got him through the gate first, and then they ended up finding a different way in, and they got onto a flight to the US, and he flew with us to UAE. So we're working on, getting him back to his parents. But then another 13-year-old, his parents couldn't get through the gate, but the troops took him. And, we've tried to call their Afghan cell phone. It's gone dark. No one's answered. Our guess is that they're no longer with us. But there's a process. We can't just say, oh, this kid is an orphan. There's a process that these NGOs go through to make sure that that's the case. Once it's known that that's the case, then there's a process to make sure that he's taken care of. So none of this is being done loosey-goosey. We're all serious people, and we're making sure that, we do everything properly.
You'll get people in a situation like this that are very much we should never have been there, and oh well, we have to get out in this, and they would call this pearl clutching, and that the media is pearl clutching, and we're just trying to drive the US back into Afghanistan. On the other end, you have people that are very critical of the administration's choice to do it this way. I'm just curious your thoughts on what are the missed nuances, I guess, as people often want to go to their extremes, wherever their partisan safety zone is.
Yeah.
What are we missing in that? And then related to that, the work you guys are doing, trying to get people out of there, do you feel like that's a nonpartisan issue? Or has that even itself become something that you find people are, either resistant to or celebrating just based on whatever their ideas about Afghanistan are in general?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. I think we are all partisan to some extent. I try very hard to be open-minded. I tend to cheat, right? But I am not, I am not a Trump guy, and was very critical of the president for the 4 years that he was in office, for example. What I find very interesting, though, is this happened. And I think there is no doubt in my mind that Biden, has failed pretty aggressively with this effort. It was a terrible plan. there wasn't a contingency plan if things went south. I do think that he started to react well, but it was probably too little too late. And I think that there is no real plan to get the rest of the people out. And I think that's why people like our organization exist. Now, do I think it would have gone better under President Trump? I have no idea, but I don't think that's the point. The point is that we made a promise to a lot of people, including American citizens, that we would not leave them behind, and we have. I am surprised at how many people are rallying around President Biden saying it was going to end this way no matter what, when, look, when I was in the military, I was a company grade officer. Like, I'm not even pretending that I have the skill to do, a nationwide extraction. But I do know that the order should be, you pull out the civilians, then you pull out the military, not you pull out the military, then you pull out the civilians. And that's effectively what we did. So, we took away the shield, and then we're surprised when, everyone was getting immediately taken over, massacred, arrested, blocked from getting to the airport, whatever. And so I think it was a pretty colossal failure on Biden's part. I think that he did try extremely hard to salvage it once he screwed it up. But I have a real problem with the journalists that are covering for him. Because very candidly, if President Trump was still in office, this would be his third impeachment. No doubt in my mind. And I don't think Biden should be impeached. I'm not saying anything like that, but like just every once in a while, I would really love to see some actual accountability, right? Department of State, some of these SIV applications are 6 years old, and they haven't been able to process an application in 6 years. These people could have been out of the country already. DOD, we have 20 years of generals telling us that we were turning the corner in Afghanistan, and the corner was never turned. And so, all of these things transpired. The president did a bad job with this pullout, and it doesn't appear like anyone is going to have any accountability for any of this. In fact, I think these people will get promoted, and I think that, fast forward 10 months and they'll be campaigning on, Biden finally got us out of Afghanistan. It's frustrating. That being said, spending time on that isn't very interesting to me. What's interesting to me now is we still have to find a way to get the rest of the people out, and we have to now take care of these refugees that we've pulled out and get them, into a good place. Get them to the States, make sure that they have enough in the refugee camps, because right now a lot of the U.S. refugee camps are pretty tight right now because of the rapid manner in which we've done this and the backlog of SIV applicants. So people need clothes, and they need, women need sanitary napkins, and like these crazy things that we take for granted. Right now we're delivering these to these camps by the thousands. And then once these people, are allowed into the States, there's actually very little that the government does for them. The average person is going to get $1,250 per person and 6 months of Medicaid, and that's it. And so, if we don't ensure that these people come into the country successfully, this could be a recipe for disaster, for them, for us, for everyone. And so Save Our Allies, kind of has multi-prongs. The first one was to get as many people out as possible. Now we have these refugees. How do we make sure that they come into the country in a dignified manner and we set them up for success? These are educated people. It's not what Americans stereotype Afghans as. A lot of these people speak 3 and 4 languages. They have skills. They can succeed in the country as long as we facilitate them becoming successful.
If people want to learn more about what you're doing or support the work, where should they go?
They should go to saveourallies.org. It is a group that is made up of a coalition of nonprofits. It is now formed as its own 501c3, but there is no significant overhead. There are no salaries. Everybody is working out of their own organizations. I volunteer my time from my own business. Sarah Verardo of the Independence Fund volunteers her time from, and is paid by the Independence Fund, not by Save Our Allies. Chad Robichaud is paid by the Mighty Oaks Foundation, not Save Our Allies. So the goal with Save Our Allies is it's an all volunteer effort, and we're pooling resources there to solve these refugee problems.
This is a short clip for YouTube. If you want to see the entirety of this conversation, head to my other platforms. The links are in the description.